With this, I'm very glad to just take the questions, and we have already garnered some of the questions from the investors. Say like, one is, what is the SWOT of India today and post-COVID? That is, they would like to know the strength, weakness, and opportunity as well as threats that are there in the markets, and what is it
Yeah,
likely
sure.
to be in the future as well.
Okay. So strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. So the threat, of course, the COVID is the biggest threat, right? The COVID's impact, that is the COVID lasting for some more time, and as a result, lockdown going on. So the biggest threat to the economy is that the COVID is not well controlled by India, and that a solution is not found by the medical world soon enough. So that is the biggest threat, right? The weakness for India is that this medical threat, if we don't do the lockdown situation properly and we reopen it too fast, the weakness of India is a lack of hospital infrastructure, a general ability of people to be very close to each other, the ability to spread this virus rapidly. And so the weakness is that we need extraordinary discipline to control this. A little bit of laxity could mean that we will be destroyed, from that as a nation. I think the weakness is the population and the poor people, the big people in our country. The strength of India and the opportunity of India. So let me talk about the either way, opportunity for strength. Okay, the opportunity for India comes from the damage that has happened to China in this whole process. The damage in terms of the fact that there are various theories around it, whether China actually deliberately caused it versus that they were trying to do some kind of warfare, and that only went into a problem and happened that way, or that they hid the news and did not allow it, did not tackle it. So there's a lot of question mark on the transparency of China, how they've handled it, and a little bit of feeling that, oh, it's called a Chinese virus now, right? So that means that China's preeminent, dominant position in the world as a supplier to the world is going to be a little shaken, right? Therein where the India's strengths come to take advantage of this opportunity. So what are India's strengths? First, I believe in this whole COVID crisis, India has come out a moral winner. Not only through the way we handled it through lockdown and showed the world that a big nation like India can act strong, number one, but more importantly, we gave away HCQ, hydrochloroquine, to America, to Malaysia, to all the countries which need it through big heart. Heck, we took a moral leadership. The third strength of India, right, is that our population, the demographic dividend, right? China has already reached a stage where their age has now started increasing in terms of their population, and the number of people has started decreasing because they have put this one family, one child for a long period of time. So they are losing 21 million people over this decade from their workforce, whereas India is adding 116 million people to their workforce in this period. So that's the biggest advantage, that any move out of China means India has got the people to deliver those products. Second advantage of India is the fact that since we did not develop as fast as China, our per capita income is only $2,000. China's is $10,000. Why I'm saying this is because the per capita income translates into per capita wages. So the average wage cost is 1/5 that of China. So for us to show an economic benefit, somebody is willing to ship from China. You would have read the news that US is actually encouraging people who want to move from China to come to India. Why? Because India versus China, in the US mind, India has been a far more morally better. We have helped them in their hour of need, and all of that. So that's the second strength. The third strength comes from the fact that China's exports to America are $540 billion. India's exports to America are $54 billion. So you want to double our exports, we need to only take 10% away from China. So it's not like I'm saying one big, hate China, love India. No, we need a gradual shift, right? And so these are the strengths of India, which with our improvement in ease of doing business, which with our Prime Minister doing so much to market India in the world, the strength of India as a democracy, all of these are the strengths. Not going to be easy to immediately implement, because a weak world, a recessionary world, means that Right now, you will only get substitution business from China. I'm making in China, I'll make it in India. But the growth of the world, when it recovers, that is the true sweet spot for India, because through a growing world, we can then become the new China to them, the new manufacturing capital of the world. The potential is there, and we hope that over the medium term, this will be executed. So I hope I've answered all 4 points.
Yeah, so that's right. And again, actually, there is always a question as to just why, that is what kind of measures Indian government is taking. Because, like India is scrambling at this hour to just escape from this virus. And what is the kind of initiatives the government of India is taking to bring the liquidity back to the system? And in what way it helps the mutual fund investors?
So first of all, I think there are 2 different aspects to the government of India. So there is a monetary aspect and a fiscal aspect. I think the government has acted brilliantly on the monetary aspect. Through the RBI, they have pumped enough liquidity into the system, LTRO, TLTRO, now the line for the mutual fund. So there is no shortage of money in the market. One. Second, they want to make the banks to lend. Hence, they have done directed lending. They have done for MSME, you lend 50% of the money we give you. They're trying to force the banks to lend. So they are trying to do that. The third aspect is that the banks, however, are not taking this money to lend because they know that the economic crisis is going to affect the company's ability to repay. So their credit judgment is not allowing them to lend. So the government's monetary stimulus is just going back to RBI and lying in RBI. So though the RBI has widened the spread between repo and reverse repo, that is the rate at which the banks borrow and the rate at which the banks lend to RBI, they're differentiated by 90 basis points. But still, the banks say, I don't mind losing 90 basis points, but I don't want to lend at 500 basis point spread and have a write-off. So I think that fear psychosis in the banking channel will take time to go, because at the end of the day, the public sector banks are accountable. There is CBI which goes after them. They make bad loans. So it will take time for the banking system to lend into the economy. And unlike in the US, where the Fed is one regulator, so the Fed in the global financial crisis bought assets called the Troubled Assets TARP program. But RBI, as per law, cannot directly buy bad loans. It needs a change of law by an act of parliament for RBI to buy loans. That's why that has not happened. Parliament has to do a change. We have to wait. Then the fiscal response of the government, right? See, they have given about 1.7 lakh crore economic package. They're given for rice, 5 kgs rice. There's a lot of stuff. But this, whatever they have done is only 0.5% of our GDP, whereas a lot of other countries have done 5%, 10% of GDP. So there's a lot of pressure on the government from market participants, from economists, to say, even Mr. Raghurajan said that 65,000 crores is the cost of giving money away to the people. There's a lot of pressure on the government, but the government is holding back. Why are they holding back? Because the government, I think, believes that today it's all bad news. And so whatever money I give, it will not be enough to satisfy your thirst.
Right.
But if you wait for the lockdown to be lifted, we know which sector is affected. I'll get a clearer position. I'll tell you why. Take, for example, the good news I talked about in terms of GDP growth, but the immediate good news for our country is that the Rabi crop has been a wonderful harvest and the monsoon forecast is good.
Yeah, so of course, it's a early monsoon.
Yes,
yeah, of course, so it's early monsoon as well.
Early monsoon. So the rural India's forecast is turning out to be good in terms of a harvest. And if you know, 44% of India's employees, working people, work in rural India. It contributes only 16% to our GDP, but 44% of people work in the rural areas. So the government is hopeful that if the rural economy is bouncing back in terms of the harvest, these people will get jobs in the harvesting, sowing season, and hence the level of spend they need to do in 10 days from now, 15 days from now, when the situation is clearer, will be less. So rather than going from 5% of GDP, then they will come and spend 3% of GDP now, which will be more than enough for it to take. So I think the government is just being measured and tactical. Very soon you will see a package being announced, no doubt about it. A lot of ground level feedback has been taken. And part of the reason the markets are rising is because they're expecting the stimulus package. So when that stimulus package happens, you will see another bounce in the market.
Okay. And again, actually, just the some more infusion to the mutual funds so that they can just take at a repo rate at the rate of 4.4% to avoid the 50,000 the crore fresh infusion was just allowed by last week to the mutual fund houses so that they can probably just not sell the debt instruments at a distress. And what is the kind of impact that it is going to have on the mutual fund industry?
So
Will the
first of
mutual
all,
fund be taking up such kind of loans?
I think the one thing is there, I think just to clarify, right? This is not a lending to the mutual funds by RBI. Okay. So this
Mm.
4.4% money is not available to the mutual funds directly from RBI. This
Okay.
4.4% is the rate at which banks can borrow from RBI to lend to
Okay.
mutual funds. So the banks will
Oh,
keep their
okay.
own spread and then only lend. So they will not
Okay.
lend at 4.4%. Number one. Number
Okay.
two is that, believe me, that only 2,000 crores out of the 50,000 crores has been used so far.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So mutual funds
Okay.
don't need the money. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Because 95% of the industry's portfolio is liquid. They are able to trade and accept, right? And there is no big, huge redemption pressure happening because of the crisis of Templeton. So, this
Okay.
money is a psychological statement to tell
Right.
the investors that we are standing behind the mutual fund industry. That has served
Okay.
its purpose. So it has helped it. There is no run on the mutual funds. Only the credit related funds are seeing some outflows, which is natural. Because when you have one credit related fund having a problem, other credit funds also naturally see that, which is quite natural. That's okay. But otherwise, there's no liquidity crisis in the mutual fund, and mutual funds are not borrowing from RBI at 4.4%. That's not available to them. So, through the banks, they can take the money.
And it's a pretty clear answer. One is you made it very clear there is enough liquidity in the mutual fund debt industry, and the fund houses are not literally just planning to just take up any loans at this point of time. Anyway, that's a good news. And again, actually, just there is a feel or the statement in the market stating that Indian government acts very swiftly and dynamically. So the perhaps India's savior may not be a miraculous vaccine, but the efficiency of its administration on the public health responses to the crisis. So, what's your comments on this, sir? You
I
believe
agree.
it?
I agree with you. I agree with it. I think he has put it correct because I think that it is the administrative execution at the ground which is going to be the key. And I'm sure the government is aware and is working on that line only. I think the vaccine efforts are something which is a global effort. Like I said,
Right.
Poonawalla Institute in Pune is developing something that Oxford University, England, has developing. That's a global war, is not specific to India. And India will produce it and will supply it to the world. So I think what he has said is correct. I agree with you.
Yeah. And again, actually, which are all the sectors that are less affected, that is still in green zone? And I'm not talking about the COVID prone areas. I'm asking in general in the markets, in the equity markets, which are the sectors that are less affected and which are more affected at this point of time?
So if you look at it from a stock market perspective, right? 1 year, if you see, the healthcare sector actually has delivered 7% positive return. So I think healthcare is one which has actually got a positive support in this period. So clearly, because they are saying that with all of this, healthcare business will do well. Okay? So that's one good reading of that. The other thing is that the one sector, that is the only sector which is positive on a 1 year basis. Less
Mm.
negative sector is FMCG. As I explained some time back, that the basic necessities of life, right, are something which will hold up whatever you do. See, people may stay at home, but still will eat, right? Will still eat, they still comb their hair, they will still. So the basic necessities will continue to be there. So that is something which is less affected. The second is that the consumption will also benefit from the rural effect. As I said, with a good monsoon, rural consumption will bounce back. So FMCG is a good safer sector to be in. The worst sectors affected, I would say, are capital goods and industrials because the government has to kickstart the capex cycle will take some time because the first need of the hour is to get the economy back on track before they can really invest in the long-term capital goods and capex. One sector which has been badly affected recently, but on which I don't think is a bad sector, is the banking sector. I think this has been affected because everybody is reading saying, oh, kitne NPS hone wale hain, what is going to happen? A fear psychosis has come into the banking play. One. Second is 35% of the Nifty is banking and financial services. So because FII is pulled out, immediately those stocks have corrected. I believe in the longer term, banks are the blood supply of the Indian economy and that they will bounce back. And so while currently it is showing not a good state, I believe that banking, good quality banks, there will be bad banks and good banks. Good quality banks are good ones. NBFCs will take that much more time. NBFCs also are still not going to recover so fast in terms of that. So I would say that the other sector which one should avoid now is the metal sector, because metals are a part of a global cyclicals, right? So world is going through recession, the demand for metal is going to drop. So clearly metal prices are going to be under pressure, demand for metals will be under pressure. So metals is something we should be a bit careful about. Um, People tend to buy oil investment, but oil's future, as you know, is not so great. It's good for Indian
Right.
economy, but it's not good as a sector. So oil is another sector which we
That's
should
right. This
take.
reducing oil prices, is it going to benefit India?
Uh, so let me put it this way, that these current low prices are not sustainable. I think oil prices will bounce back. Our estimate of oil prices is about $45 to $50 on a longer term basis. So the benefits are definitely there, because pre-COVID, India was working off $75 as the oil price on its current account deficit and managing the economy. So there is a saving of $25 to $30 from our longer term average cost. But it's not that this today's $20 cost is definitely going to benefit. I think that between 20 to 45, the prices will rise again. So definitely lower oil prices. But lower oil prices are also low because demand is low. If Indian economy recovers fast and India is buying more oil, that itself will lead to some amount of oil price increase, because India imports 80% of its oil. So yes, lower oil prices are a benefit for India, but don't read that much into it as if $20 to $75, $55 are benefit. No, it will not happen.
Right, that's great. And is there an end to this current debt market issues or a crisis, I would rather say, in the near future, post-COVID?
So I would say that if you are in credit risk funds, right, you should pull out your money.
Hmm.
Because I'll tell you why. Because as I said, the economy is going to go through 2 quarters of negative growth, right?
Hmm.
What is going to happen is two sectors are going to be very badly affected. So one is the fact that NBFCs, which have borrowed, and most of the credit funds have significant exposure to NBFCs, because they always pay you a little better interest than a manufacturing company. But NBFCs are forced to give moratorium to their customers, to
Right.
their truck borrowers, to their personal loan borrowers, to their credit card, to everybody. But they may not get it from, because in the mutual fund industry, I put on NCD. I can't give a moratorium to him, because it is your money that I'm putting into that. A bank can afford to give a moratorium, but I cannot. So there will be a bit of tightness in financing there. And some of these NBFCs may delay their payments for a bit. So what happens, I'll tell you, is that in the credit markets, doesn't mean that a borrower needs to default for you to make a loss in the credit mutual fund. If there is a downgrade because the rating agency feels that he cannot pay on due date, you will incur a loss in your credit fund, right? So to that extent, I would say that stay away from credit risk funds for the next 2 quarters, and then we can take a call on this. That being said, the non-credit risk funds, please study the portfolios carefully. Why I'm saying this is, as you know, in Templeton's case, their low duration fund had credit. Their short-term fund had credit. And many people thought low duration, anytime liquidity, liquid fund, and put it there. Do not go by that impression. The only truly liquid funds are liquid fund itself, money fund, and the overnight fund, which invests in repos. Right? So I would say that you want to invest in those, you will suffer a slightly lesser return. So liquid funds and overnight funds are safe, but you may get a 3 to 4% kind of a return. It's still better on a post-tax basis compared to your savings bank returns. But if you want to get slightly better return, you can go to low duration short-term funds. But please look at the portfolio of that fund to see. And the first very simple question is, please take a list of the Templeton funds, those 25,000 crores. Take a list of that portfolio with you, ma'am. And you see which of those names, right, are there in other fund houses in the same fund. Because why I'm saying this is, Templeton is obviously going to go and try to recover it fast. So
And
when they
again,
try to
actually,
recover
just
it,
yeah, on the same context, I have a question from a client, Mr. Natraj. See, what
yes.
extent is Franklin fever? Is it restricted to one AMC or has it spread to many other AMCs?
Okay, so right now it is restricted to one AMC. Another AMC, BOI AXA, wrote down 50% of its credit fund. So I will not rule out other fund houses, credit funds being in a little bit of trouble. Okay,
Okay.
because in that credit space, right? Why I'm saying this is, if you look at the kind of exposure, see the names which Templeton invested in. Now, those names, if Templeton tries to sell it in the marketplace to a bank,
Right.
whatever price they manage to sell will be the price at which the other mutual funds have to value the same paper.
Right.
I believe this company will give me the money on due date, ma'am. No doubt about it. But
Right.
because Templeton has promised to get the money back to investors at the earliest, he will go and ask some bank saying, will you buy this paper? That fellow will say, I'll buy it only at this price. Once that price is documented in the market, then other AMCs have to value it at that price. So automatically that kind of a correction will happen. So that's why I said looking at that portfolio is important. That being said, I think that most of the fund houses are running their non-credit funds in very, very proper liquidity fashion. So I don't think this is going to be a contagion. But I do not rule
Okay.
out that some credit funds. Why I'm saying no, ma'am, there are two reasons for this problem. Please, as all the investors are listening. So the problem is not in your control, because if two other people or 20 other people or 2,000 other people who have invested in the same fund decide to pull out their money from that fund will face a liquidity risk.
Right.
It's not in your control. So it's like a run on a fund, So I'm just saying that RBI's 50,000 crore was a very great comfort which has helped to prevent any run. But on a credit risk fund, there is, I think, about 5,000 crores out of the 55,000 crores. I think in the last 3-4 days, 5,000 crores has been pulled out. So about roughly 8 to 9% of the credit risk funds has pulled out. This trend, if some people more will pull out, in the credit risk fund, the fund manager to sell the credit risk, there has to be a buyer.
Right, obviously, just there has to be a.
So
He'll be
that's why I
literally
said,
pressurized. Yeah.
correct. So please stay careful about credit risk funds, and anything can spread. It can spread probably to the credit risk category. So just stay away from that is what I would recommend to your investors.
Beyond the COVID. Okay. Which of the categories do you suggest to an investor with 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year horizon in equity space?
3-year, 5-year, and 10-year. 1 minute. I had just sent a WhatsApp to somebody. I'll open it. So, actually speaking, I have given it across debt and equity. I know the question is only about equity. So, since I had already given it, can I just read it out that way?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay. So, on a 3-year basis, I would say 20% in liquid funds, 20% in banking and PSU debt fund, 50% in large cap,
okay,
10% in mid cap. That adds up to 100.
Okay. That's great.
For a 5-year.
You have the, okay.
So
ready-made formula, right?
For a 5-year, I would suggest 20% in liquid,
okay,
20% in corporate bond fund, because I believe that over 5 years, this whole credit crisis will go away and corporate bond fund will give good yields.
What in case already is sitting on corporate bond?
Yeah, so 20% in liquid, 20% corporate bond, 30% large cap, 20% mid cap, and about 10% small cap over a 5-year basis.
Okay.
Now
my question is, yeah, exactly right. You have just.
Let me finish the 10-year and then I'll take your question.
Okay, sure.
In the 10-year, I would say still keep 20% in liquid, right?
Okay.
Put 20% in large cap, 40% in mid cap, and 20% in small cap.
Okay, that's great. My question is, what if somebody is already sitting on the corporate bond fund, because that carries a high quality portfolio, but still actually just at times of crisis, even the high quality portfolio can take a beating. You have suggested around 20% exposure in corporate bond fund in a 5-year horizon. What in case a client is already having such kind of exposure? So they need to just continue. What's your view on the corporate bond?
So, in the corporate bond funds, ma'am, what happens is that, see, basically in debt, what happens for somebody who's already holding is that this 3-year comes as a big confusion in his mind because you get indexation benefits, right? So if they have finished the 3 years, then I say suggest to liquidate the corporate bond fund and move it into the, like I said, banking PSU or the other liquid category. I would say if you're completed your 3 years, if you're not completed your 3 years, if you are going to finish in the next 1 year,
Okay.
Please look at the
Okay.
portfolio. Please look at the
Okay.
portfolio. Do not worry about the 3 year. Do not worry about the tax impact. Look at the quality of the portfolio. If in 1 year there are NBFCs of slightly lower quality in that 1 year in that corporate bond fund, where he has already finished only 2 years and one more year has to wait for 3 years, I would suggest don't worry about the taxation. You please move it out.
Okay. Okay.
But if
Again,
he's only
actually,
invested
just
last 1 year back, he's got 2 more years to go. I would say hang on. Because I think in
okay.
2 years' time, the situation, see, in the middle,
The recovery will happen.
in the middle, something may happen. But in 3 years' time, it will all get set right.
Right, right. And what in case actually there's a lot of questions we keep getting from our investors. One is on can India manage the current crisis? Can we tide over this? See, just one is on food supply. Other one is from the finance point of view. So do we have enough surplus there? So coming to the first one, is India having enough food stocks to tide over COVID-19? Because
Absolutely, ma'am. Today we don't have enough place to store the food. All our granaries are full. Food is not a problem. And with the bountiful harvest, Rabi crop sowing was very good. So the harvest is going to be very good. Outlook for the monsoon for the Kharif sowing is very good right now. So I don't think food we need to worry.
Again, the next part of the question is Indian government having funds to manage the crisis?
So, ma'am, it's like this. So we have enough liquidity to manage a liquidity crisis.
Right.
Right? To actually go and buy bad loans, to actually go and give away money to people, right? Our ability to have that much money is constrained by our rating.
Okay.
Okay. So the rating agencies, right? Today we have promised a fiscal deficit of 3.5%. Believe me, that is impossible to achieve. Okay, so we are definitely going to breach the 3.5% because we are expecting to do a lot of PSU disinvestment to achieve that target itself. In the current market conditions, I don't know whether that is possible. So Indian government has very limited fiscal space. Now, the point is that if we take a stance that I don't care about what the rating is, and that for me, my nation is more important. Even if the rating goes down, I believe that spending this money will bounce back the GDP, and 2 years later, 1 year later or 2 years later, I will get back the rating. But for a short term, I don't mind what is rating in these things. India has enough money. So it needs the political will of the government to tell the rating agencies that, look, you do what you want with your rating. My country needs this, I have to do. So that strength of economic mind is a key issue here. If we exercise and we say we will go to 5% of GDP, right? Instead of the 3, I will go 5%. I will spend this to recover my economy. I will boost it. I will buy out MSME loans. I'll boost the car loan. I'll give them money I'll give money each person to give up their old car and buy a new car. I'll give 10,000 rupees to each person who does that. Those kind of things will recover the car industry. Then that future GDP will pay for it. But it needs a short-term guts to tell the rating agencies that I don't mind if you downgrade me, but I'm doing this. So India's money situation is entirely dependent on how well we communicate with the rating agencies.
That's right, because there was recently an announcement, probably just it was made by the president of US India Business Council. I believe like her name is Nisha Desai. If you remember, she was the assistant secretary to the South and Central Asia probably during Barack Obama's period. So whatever she just announces, probably just it spreads like a forest fire because of that. So she has announced that post COVID-19, India can build more a resilient economy that is diversified and attractive to the global manufacturers and services, as a majority of the businesses worldwide have faced disruptions and economic fallout. What's your view on this? Actually, do you feel like India has more opportunity just post COVID-19? What's your feel about it?
I think that the COVID-19 is actually been a blessing in disguise for India, because as I explained earlier, it has hurt China from a perception perspective. It has severely hurt China. It has taught the world that you can't be overly dependent on one particular country. So you need to diversify out of China. And India's demographic dividend, low per capita income, all of these I just explained, ma'am. So broadly, I'm very much in line with what they say, that I believe this next decade is going to be India's decade. And we will definitely, take advantage of it in a very, very, very good fashion.
And
I fully agree with that view.
maybe very related to that, you have another question of our investor. How much time do you foresee that the Indian economy will take to come out of this pandemic? And many analysts project it as W curve. Obviously, just you answered it earlier as a U curve, even though not in a very immediate, that is in the very near future. So just how about this one?
I think it will take at least a year.
Okay.
So 2021 is a write-off. As I said, our best case scenario is for a 0% GDP growth. So 21-22, I think the next year, I think we will come out of this pandemic-related issues. So that's why I said it's going to be a U-shaped recovery.
Right, in 2007-8, if I'm right, actually we just took close to 12 to 14 months to come out of the trend. And compared to that, the market is pretty wide at this point of time. Still, do you feel like a year is good enough for us to come out?
Yes, because of the fact that the way we have managed the COVID through lockdown means that we have taken a lot of short-term pain for the long-term gain. So the kadiri pill, the bitter pill we have swallowed. So very sharply we have done. So from that perspective, the bounce back will be equally sharp because we don't need to worry about the medical impact of the crisis. I think probably India, I would say, is among the top 5 countries in the world in terms of medically responding to the pandemic. So that's the reason that gives me confidence, because a balanced approach or wishy-washy approach would have meant that you'll have a very prolonged thing, and that may take 18 months to have recovered because the pain will be prolonged. So I think the top shot, in a way, you can say it's an amputation of a finger. Right?
Okay.
Lockdown. But that will grow back fast.
It can be explained better than this. And when you come to the GDP projections, of course, Fitch and Moody says that it's at going to be 0.2% for the year. Like, then obviously, like a lot of investors keep raising this question. So who pushes the market? So why the market keeps on climbing up? How does it happen? How is it possible?
So this GDP projection, actually our best case says 0%, not even 0.2. So we are actually more pessimistic than Fitch and Moody as well as India is concerned. But as I explained, ma'am, why the market gets pushed up? Simple reason. One, that market is full of impatient people who want to buy before the good news comes out. One. Two is that the Indian market players have a lot of liquidity. Two. Three is that the world over, everybody is pumping liquidity like nobody's business. And ultimately, if you look at the emerging economies, then you take the best 5 emerging economies are the BRICS economies. Right? So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Brazil, Russia, South Africa. 3 of these are commodity exporters. India and China are the only ones which are commodity importers. In a time when commodity prices are going down, biggest among them being oil, but all metals, commodity importing countries are standing to gain. So what happens is that we will get cheap metals. Everything will become cheap for our country and our economy. Oil being the single biggest factor. That with the fact that our monsoon forecast came positive, and with the fact that market is expecting the government fiscal stimulus to be announced, people want to buy before the stimulus announced, because when the stimulus announced, those sectors will go up. So rather I be smart and buy it before, then my profit will go up. So that is what I think is the reason the market is going up. It is reading into the future in terms of the market.
Okay. Is it probably one of the reasons the mutual funds are pumping in more and more money so that we don't get to know the pain of FIs withdrawals?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that you have already answered this, because there is a sub question to this one. Should we consider investing in health sector funds? Do you want the investors to just go sectoral at this point of time? Or anyway, I think they have given the allocation as well. But as a sectoral
I'm just saying that health sector, I would say no. I'll tell you why. Health sector is benefiting today from a TINA position.
There is no alternate, obviously.
There is no alternate. Because all of the sectors are looking bad. Because remember one thing in the health sector. Today, that liquidity which is going into that TINA factor is driving up the prices.
Right.
But a cure and a vaccine may be found by one company or 2 companies. Why should all the 20 companies benefit from that?
Right, that's right.
Correct. One. Second is, when the economy starts recovering, money will flow out of healthcare into those which are growing the growth. So
That's right.
leave it to the fund manager to buy health sector now, but get out of it at the right time. By you putting in
Right.
health sector funds, you will not know when to leave it. So you
Right.
please do not venture. Let the fund managers are already increasing allocation. That's why the health sector stocks are going up.
Okay. So it's
That
better
benefit is
to.
already coming through your diversified fund. Fund manager is doing it. You don't have to concentrate that risk because in sector funds, entry point is not as important as the exit point.
Oh, that's true. That's the right side. And as globally, it looks very gloomy. Will it impact India? If so, to what extent?
Definitely, global gloominess will affect India in two ways: a bad effect and a good effect. The bad effect is that India's exports, which are today 25% of GDP, you're hoping that it will grow to 50-60% truly to be a good economy. I think that will get delayed. So India's story of export-led growth, Make in India growth, all of that will happen now, but with that much of a delay because the slowing world may not want to buy so much from India. One, but the benefit of to India is that a slowing world means slowing commodity prices, slowing oil prices, slowing things. One. Second is in a slowing world, people will be keen to cut costs because their demand is going down there. So when they want to cut costs, they'll look even more at cheaper countries to buy from like India. So there is
Right.
a good part and a bad part. It's a double-edged knife. So global gloominess will benefit some aspects and hurt some aspects.
That's great. And actually, just I think the first part you have already answered.
Yes,
Maybe
yes.
when it comes to the sub question of it, can we start investing now, or should we wait to see more corrections in the index?
Well, I mean, that's a personal choice. Will there be more corrections? Absolutely. But will there be more rises before the correction? Absolutely. So my point is that, like I said, when I talked about SIP investing, I said actually you should double your investment over the next 6 months. Whatever your SIP, just go and top it up to double. The reason I'm saying is that nobody, even Warren Buffett, never got
Right.
the timing exactly right. Right? So I would say that can there be more correction? Yes, if suddenly COVID goes from 30,000 cases to 50,000 cases, or US has a bad turnaround, somewhere that negative could come hurt. I have no predictor of the medical situation.
Right.
So if the medical outlook comes positive, market would have already seen the bottom.
Right.
But if there's some more medical surprise, nasty surprise waiting to happen somewhere, there could be a correction.
Right.
So I would say that rather than wait to catch the exact bottom, we are
Right.
very close to the bottom. So you're buying in a U-shaped economy. You're buying the V-shaped recovery. Who knows? It has already started with this month. I don't know. April
Right.
already it has gone up. So we don't know that. So I would say that just take cognizance of that.
Got it. And actually, just when it comes to this one, there is a more of a brouhaha of ETF and index funds. And
Yes.
as it has done well in the global markets, one is normally the investor tends up at just asking like how much exposure of mine should just get into the index funds as they probably carry the lesser expenses. But actually, if you look at the current trend, index funds have fallen much more than the fund manager managed diversified funds. So what's your take on this?
So index funds are generally good when everything is going well and you want to put your money, then it's good to put in an index fund. In a time when
Right.
there's a sharply polarized, there are very good sectors and very bad sectors. Unfortunately, an index has to have a little bit of every sector. Whereas a
Right.
fund manager is able to choose less of a bad sector and put more of a good sector. So in these troubled times is where that real quality of research and expertise and diversification all come to the aid. So at best, you look at it today, average cost of mutual funds is 1.5%. Average
Right.
cost of index funds will be 25-30 basis. That 1% is nothing compared to the alpha a fund manager should be able to generate.
Right.
So in a cost benefit analysis, index funds will actually be costlier for you. If you took purely at cost, they may look cheaper to you. But if you look at the benefit that you're going to get for the cost, right? I think that extra 1% or something that you're giving to a mutual fund manager, he will be able to deliver 2 or 3 times that as alpha to you over the medium term.
Right. With a lot of zones still in red, maybe COVID point of view, if the lockdown continues in India for another 1 month, will India get into a recession? Anyway, I think that this point has been already answered by you. If
Yes,
2 quarter goes negative, very clearly it's a signal that we are getting into a recession.
correct.
And again, the next question is: we keep hearing that
So,
globally index or ETFs that is also just have been answered. because the fund
Yes.
manager justifies by just giving a much better
And
return for whatever
also one more
expenses.
point, since he has mentioned global, I will
Yeah,
explain, Janan, that one of the reasons fund managers deliver this alpha
yeah,
is a word called information asymmetry.
right,
That I know what the market doesn't know, right? Better, right? Abroad, that information asymmetry is very, very thin because all news instantaneously gets spread.
right,
India, unfortunately, even with all the technology and everything, there's still a big time gap between understanding. Second is that the depth of the Indian market is very, very less. So the
right,
top 150 stocks are well traded, but there are 500 stocks available in BSE 500 for you to invest. So the balance 350 stocks, only an individual research can deliver that value. No index fund can go and get you that value. So I think between India and outside, the case for index funds is even less because of this information asymmetry that prevails in the market.
right. That's great. And one view is stock prices of large blue chip stocks are very expensive. Of course, if had someone looked at it by March 24th, there was a steeper correction, and even the blue chip stocks fell down by closer by 40% plus. So, should we still buy large cap funds or those stocks is a question because they feel one investor feels the stocks are quite expensive in the blue chip space.
So I think that I answered that question when I gave the asset allocation.
Right,
That
right,
with a
right,
1 year perspective, you can take because when the market chases safety, they buy
yeah,
already what is expensive will become even more expensive. So in a short
right.
term 1 year period, what is safe will be expensive and can get even more expensive. So you can make decent returns. But over a longer period of time, I agree that these are very expensive. That's why I increased the allocation to mid cap and small cap. So if you just look at an asset allocation suggestion, that will answer this question.
I have a very good article which I read it in Forbes, and it was slightly contradictory because the entire globe is talking about a hefty job losses. So this article was quite interesting, and then it was talking about with the kind of automation that is likely to come post COVID-19. There actually a lot of jobs are just likely to get accelerated, and which in turn will also just pave us a way for the recovery and also protect us from the future pandemics. I want your views on this. And,
So
the report is from none other than McKinsey, so it makes you just seriously read the complete article.
yeah, so I think that the report was largely US centric and developed market centric.
Right,
Okay. So I mentioned to you some time back about China's per capita income and India's per capita income, right?
right,
I said
right,
China is at 10,000, India is at 2,000. For
right,
information, US is at 60,000.
right,
So when the 60,000 is the per capita income, the per capita wage is around that level. It means that automation cost saving is a huge advantage to them because you're
right,
paying $60,000 per person for wages. Okay.
right,
Now, you want to do that automation, let's say at $40,000, the cost comes, right? Effectively. It means you're saving $20,000, one third you're saving, right? Huge advantage to Americans. But the moment he looks and says, I can get this at $2,000 from India, he will save $38,000 versus automation from India, right? So, so what is my point is that ultimately life, the balance occurs based on a purely on a cost basis. According to me, the biggest driver of automation away from the world will be India because we will be able to produce so much cheaper. And mind you, even in the automated world, those labor itself will be cheaper in India. So even in automated world, you may need a smaller amount of workforce, but even that will be cheaper in India. So to me, yes, automation is a threat to the developed world. Not only the cost, man, they don't have number of people because of the baby boomers are all today 60 and 70. They don't have enough young people. So they are forced into automation because they don't have people. But when they realize that they can buy something at 1/30th the cost, 60,000
right,
versus 2,000, right? You'll say, why should I invest my capex in an automation when year on year I can save 58,000 rupees from buying from $58,000 by buying from India? So to me,
true, true,
it's a constant debate. It will keep happening, but India, because of this cheap labor, can get the greatest share of whatever labor force industries are coming out will come to India preferentially. So the impact will be that much delayed for India.
That's great. And actually, just today also, if you know, like that is China has just announced a digital currency to be used locally, and even in stock exchange, they don't want people to trade in dollars. So, with a given kind of trend or understanding of the kind of shock China is trying to give to the world, so what would be the fate of our INR and the USD?
I think the USD is going to get stronger purely because when the liquidity is pumped into the world, that money, dollar is a safe haven. It's a reserve currency. So more liquidity will go into more dollars. INR, because of the fact that Indian INR will benefit from the drop in the price of oil. Oil is a big determinator of the Indian currency. To some extent, that will help to cushion the blow on the currency. The second is, in the short term, there could be depreciation because the dollar is strengthening. But in the medium term, as India's Make in India program comes and we start exporting, our exports will come and add to the benefit. And so we should see a slightly more stable rupee. So I would say a short-term depreciation will be there. Over medium term, we would be among the better performing currencies.
That's great to hear, sir. What are the do's and don'ts advised to us now? Will we get some liquidity as some debt funds are shutting down? I think that has been well answered already.
Yeah, I've already answered it.
Yeah. So what do you feel as the do's and don'ts to them finally?
I think I answered that in terms of the credit. I said avoid credit risk fund. Let's stick to the liquid end of the segment. If you're going beyond liquid for the extra 0.5%, 1% return, look at the portfolio and then take a call.
That's extremely good.
That's my.
It's been a great session, and undoubtedly, just I would say that 1 lakh subscribers for your YouTube is nothing for the kind of knowledge that you have and the way you just share with the investors or with the advisors. It's been really wonderful to us, sir. Thank you so much for having accepted our invitation.
Thank you, ma'am.
And having spent a lot of time with us, and your flow has been really spontaneous, so we didn't leave a gap as well. So we are extremely thankful at this hour. And on behalf of our investors, on behalf of my team, C Profit, and thank you so much once again for having just spent your valuable time with us. With this, just
thank you. Wish all your investors all the best and happy investing.
Thank you so much, sir.
And stay safe. Stay safe in this.
Yeah, stay safe. Stay home, and let's hope for a very brighter future. Let's keep investing interesting. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.